Alrighty, I think we are live. I am having technical difficulties. I thought I had this all ready to go and set up, and then I just lost my notes. So let me get those up before we get started. That'll be good, though, to give everybody a few minutes to kind of get on. All right, here we go. Here it is. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Alrighty, so welcome. Welcome to the Blessed Mamas Workshop. Today is the first actual workshop where we're going to be sharing kind of all these biblical advice and tips on motherhood. And we're going to be really diving deep into some topics that I think a lot of moms want to hear about, that a lot of moms are struggling with, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to navigate that. And so my hope and my goal is really to speak to you and to speak to all the moms who need advice and who need just like a little bit of direction, some encouragement, in this busy season. And I feel like for myself, that is really what I've struggled with. I've struggled with just not being able to fully enjoy motherhood because I've been so fixated on being a good enough mom or the perfect mom. And I don't want that to be the case for you. I want you to really be able to just see your kid, be with your kid, and enjoy them. God gave us these children as a gift, and this is truly like the most beautiful thing that He could have ever given us. And yet, we get caught up in what we are and aren't doing. And so these workshops are really meant for that. So while everybody's still just taking a few minutes to get on, I want to share just a little bit about worry and what worry, the kind of worry we're talking about is. So, first, I believe there are two different kinds of worry. So, one, there is this healthy worry, right? This is where we signal ourselves to protect and take care of our kids. I truly believe that this is from God. This is something that God has given us so that we can protect and care for these kids, this blessing that He's given us. And so I want to give you an example. So the other day, my daughter, she woke up with a fever, and I'm like, oh no, like, something's wrong, the whole thing. And I start paying really close attention to her. And I feel like in that moment, this is what happens, right? We start fixating on this thing that's happening, and we're trying to find a solution, and that's good, right? Because if our kid is sick, we need to maybe give them some antibiotics or some medicine to make them feel better, or maybe a cool compress or any of that to help them. And so I feel like that's what a healthy worry is. But then comes this constant or irrational worry that is just happening all the time. And I find that when I have a constant or irrational worry, this is because I'm not trusting in the Lord. I'm not with Him, and I'm not, spending time with Him. So I think that when we can kind of differentiate those two kinds of worry, we start to realize, like, okay, there is this healthy worry, and it's a good thing. So worrying is not all bad. But then there is this other part of worry that's starting to tell me, like, this is not what God had planned. I'm starting to venture into controlling and trying to be a controlling parent. So before we get into how to quiet mother, or how to be a quiet mom, wouldn't that be nice too? How to stop worrying in motherhood, I want to let you know that I am not talking about anxiety when I'm talking about worry. Kind of what I just mentioned really describes the kind of worry, that the natural kind of worry that comes up in motherhood. I myself have struggled with anxiety, so I may accidentally like interchangeably use those, and that's just because it is part of my experience. And I want to just speak on that for a second, that if you are struggling with worry and anxiety, it is okay to go get help. It is really, truly an important part of becoming a better mom, and also, getting closer to Christ. For me, I just spent a lot of time praying and praying that God would guide me to a counselor who could really I guess, helped me reshape my relationship with him. So I was more focused on him rather than focused on all my worries and anxieties and all of that. So if you are dealing with anxiety, not this natural kind of worry, I just want you to know that it is totally okay to go get help. So, anyway, now that I've had that disclaimer out there, I want to share my story of worry. So, I have been a worrier since I can remember. Like I just mentioned, I've kind of had this anxiety that's always been there. I would say since I was little, since since I could remember. But it really started to heighten when I was trying to get pregnant. My husband and I, we had been trying for, I think it was just about 4 months when I really hit that peak point of anxiety. I was pretty much like, we're never getting pregnant. God, I'm so stressed out. I'm worried. I'm anxious. And that was the moment I realized, like, this worry was out of control. And then I thought to myself, well, when I get pregnant, all this worry will go away because I'll have this baby growing inside of me and I'll be so excited. And then I saw those two pink lines and I couldn't enjoy my pregnancy from that point on. I was so worried about losing this child. And from there, like, it pretty much ruined my entire first trimester because I was so focused on what ifs. What if this baby doesn't make it? What if, just all the things that go along with that, all that anxiety. So, second trimester rolls around, and obviously, I make it past that 12-week mark, and I'm just like, man, like, I'm so blessed. This is going to be great now. And I realized that, I had been so far from God. Like, this was my problem, that I was not trusting Him, trusting that He wanted what was best, not only for me, but for this child. Like, I think in that first trimester, being a first time mom, you don't like think to yourself or realize how how really godly this is, how holy it is, and he loves this child more than I do. Like, it's almost not even real at this point. So, second trimester, like I said, I really start just being with the Lord more, and I started doing like prayer journaling, where I would just journal and just pray to the Lord, like, for sometimes like an hour or more, just to get all those anxieties out. And that was when I really saw a turning point. I really thought like anxiety was behind me. It wasn't going to hit me. I had like this beautiful labor. Actually, like, when I went into labor, I was kind of surprised because my water broke, which I was worried because I was like, oh gosh, I'm 4 weeks early. But then I was born 5 weeks early. I wasn't worried. I went into the hospital. They were like, oh, sit down. You're getting, but we're going to roll you there. And it's like, and I'm like, no, like, I'm good. Like, I'm fine, And so I had an all natural, unmedicated birth. And then my daughter comes out, and I look at her and I'm like, she's like blue. And in that moment, that worry kind of started to come up again. And I just remember thinking to myself, oh, she's going to the color's going to change. It's kind of normal. It happens to some babies. And then it's not changing. And this all happened, very fast. But in my mind, it was so slow because I had seen her. And then all of a sudden, though, she's getting taken away from me. And there's nurses and doctors running in, and that panic starts happening. And so as soon as my daughter was taken away from me, I start like really shaking, like obsessively. I was like, my husband's getting worried now because I'm losing it. And they just keep telling him, like, it's hormones, she's fine. And it, clearly probably was partially hormones, but I really think it was worry. So I get to the NICU with my daughter 2 days later, which that's a whole story in between there. And I'm sitting there and I'm just panicked. Like, when can I bring this child home? When can I hold this child? And I thought that, like, when she got home, that worry was going to go away. I thought, when she starts sleeping through the night, that worry will go away. When she stops nursing, when she stops, when she starts actually eating solid foods, like, all these things, like, all these milestones were going to make the worry go away. And it just didn't. And so I found that pretty much every milestone brought up a new set of worries. And I did not want to live like that. I knew that that wasn't right, but I was like, I don't know how to get out of it. So I did end up going back to counseling. And the very first thing that we talked about was just my relationship with God and how it was not right. I had not been with him. And so ever since that point, I have been working just to reconnect myself, rekindle that relationship with God. And really, so I could be the mom that God was calling me to be for my daughter. And so if you've been around Bless Our Littles for a little bit, you know that that is my mantra here. I want to create this space for moms to want to grow and to be better, not only for their kids, but to please and honor God. And so that is my hope. So today we're going to chat about four different areas to look at when you want to quiet this worry and motherhood. And so I'm going to just quickly go over the four and then we're going to dig a little deeper into each topic. So, number one, we need to shift our mindset. So, we'll talk about what that mindset stuff, oh, what that mindset shift looks like. And then we need to learn number two is what things we can control and how to let go of the things that we cannot control and how that works biblically. Number three is what we should and what we shouldn't do when we start to notice that worry. And then number four is that prayer changes everything. And I save that for last because I know a lot of people get that advice. But I have a different take on it, a little different spin on it. So I want you to really listen to that because that is the changing part of all of this. So these are the four areas we're going to talk through. So let me get my notes already here. Okay, here we go. All right. So number one, we need to shift our mindset. And what does that mindset shift look like? So, for me, I want to just share this little story. So, I mentioned my daughter went to the NICU, and I got there, and I'm just staring at her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Like, I just, this worry was consuming me. And I couldn't think, I couldn't function, literally. And the NICU nurse came over to me, and she put her hand on me, and she goes, listen, I want you to know that you worrying about her isn't going to change the outcome. It's not going to change when she comes home. It's not going to change the day that she gets off oxygen. It's not going to change any of it. And I was like, wow, like, but in my back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, no, no, no. Like, worrying is being productive because in that point, that's all I could do. I could only worry really to make her better in my mind. Um, but I believe that God like plants those people and those things that are said to us for a purpose. And so that kept just kind of going through my mind. And so a little bit later, I had told my husband what the nurse said. And I mean, he was like, Lex, listen, if you believe that God created your life, if you believe that God created your daughter's life, you cannot change his story for her. You cannot change your story for yourself. This was all part of your story and all part of her story and all part of God's story. And I'm like, wow, like that's so true. Like, if I truly believe, if I trust in him, there's nothing I could do to change the circumstance. So this was number one for me is just shifting that mindset from thinking that I guess worry was going to help things, worry was going to change things, and really understanding that worry just was not going to change the outcome of anything. So, number two is what you can and cannot control about worry. So, I'm going to give you the example of SIDS just because this is something that so many moms, including myself, have worried about. And I feel like what happens is we start to feel like we want to control the situation because we want nothing to happen to this sweet child of ours. We want to protect them and care for them and love them. And that moment that we go to lay our head down and go to sleep, this worry just comes up of like, oh no, like if I go to sleep and I'm not watching them, this, and this could happen. And so I realized that in order to get sleep, right, I needed to let go of what I could not control. But first and foremost, focus on what I could. And so, in the example of SIDS, make sure that she's laying in her own bassinet, one. Two, make sure she's in like the proper sleeper that is not going to suffocate her. Don't put anything in the crib. I can control the temperature, so I can control those things. And after all of that is done, there is nothing else I can do to control it. And at that point, I need to lay this at the feet of Jesus and trust that he is going to love and provide for this child. Because something that I think I never realized until having my daughter is God loves her more than I love her, which is just to me unfathomable. Like I can't even imagine that because I love her so much and I'm sure you know that feeling. But you realize that like God loves this child more than I do. And yet this child is for his good and his glory. And so what happens is part of this child's story and a part of God's story, which is really, the bigger picture here. So remember, control what you can. It's important to do that. That is part of caring for that child of yours. But then lay down what you cannot control at the feet of Jesus. All right, number 3, the do's and don'ts of worry. Okay, so the do's. One is pray. Like I said, we'll touch on this in a little bit. Number 2, you want to count those blessings. And right now, I'm just in this season of just like watching my daughter and just being in awe of all that God has done. And I can find myself just watching her play, watching her eat, just watching her do her thing, right? And just being like, God, thank you. Like, this is beautiful. This is amazing. And even in those really early newborn weeks, like, I couldn't soak it up enough. It was amazing. And so I think in these moments of worry, if we can just kind of sit back, remove ourselves from the worry, and just observe all the blessings around us, it changes the perspective. So, something that I used to do before I had kiddos, was I would just go on a walk and I would pay attention to all of the birds. I love birds, I love listening to them. And it just helped me to find this gratitude that maybe I didn't have in the moment. Cause so easy for me to just go in a downward spiral of this, and this is wrong. And I'm frustrated and, there's nothing to be thankful for. I'm so worried. I'm so consumed. And yet there's so much to be grateful for. So number 2 there of the do's is to count your blessings. All right. The last thing that you want to do is to guard your heart and mind. So I forget exactly which verse it is, but in the Bible it says that our hearts are deceitful. And so we need to really guard our hearts against the things that are going to cause that unnecessary worry. And so for me, social media has been something I've really had to keep at an arm's length. As many of you know, I've stopped being on Instagram, partly because of this, because I can't deal with it. The other part is just, it is too much on my plate. And I want to nurture all the mamas here in my community. But it's just something that you have to be intentional about. If you find yourself, being constantly just consumed into the news and that's causing you a lot of worry and anxiety, girl, get off of it. Like, don't look at it, turn your face from that. So very, very important to remember. All right, now let's talk about the don'ts. So number 1 is do not look to the world for advice. And this kind of goes along with like guard your heart, but I'm talking like don't go to Google. Like when you start worrying, don't go to Google. I'm the Google queen. Let me say, I was the Google queen until I decided I needed to break up with Google, like officially. And I ended up getting DuckDuckGo and installing that. And it's changed everything for me. I don't find myself needing to search things when they happen. For instance, my daughter had a random fever the other day. She was acting totally fine, didn't know what was wrong. And come to find out, she ends up having a molar coming in. So it was really no big deal, but yet, like, I could have looked it up and it could have told me this big, scary thing. And I feel like what happens is that takes us away from God, which we'll talk about next in prayer. So, one thing that you don't want to do is looking to the world for advice. And number 2 is do not lean on your own understanding. Now, I know this is a Bible verse, but what I really want to talk about with leaning on your own understanding is I'm a very factual person. So, in my mind, I will start going through all the things that would make me not worry, right? Which is good and right. But if we can really read and look into God's word, we can, fix our eyes on what is true and what is right. We are going to worry less because we're going to trust that God's got it. Like this is not my story. This is my daughter's story. And bigger than that, this is God's story. So I think for me, making those changes and how I do things when I start to feel that bubbling up, that worry coming, really helps me to be a better mom, be more present, rather than just being consumed in this, this worry that just feels like it won't go away. All right. So the last thing that you can do to help quiet your worry in motherhood is to pray. Now, I know, I've gotten this advice 100 times over, and it didn't click until I would say fairly recently that if I have time to worry, then I have time to pray. And that realization right there really changed everything for me. I really started to think like the amount of time that I spend worrying about something could be spent in prayer with him, which would be totally like if we believe God is good, we believe and we trust in his goodness, then why are we worrying in the first place, right? Like, why are we obsessively worrying? Again, go back and control the things that you can control and then leave the rest up to Him. That is all you can do? So for me, that right there, like realizing when I worry, this is taking time away from being in God's presence. I mean, that changed everything for me. So there are some things that you can do. You can prayer journal. I have been doing this every single night for the last few months. Obviously, yes, there are some nights that I'm a little tired, but just find time just to be with him. Something that I was just talking to my husband about was, I said, gosh, I feel like I'm always like just fitting God in like where I can. And I feel like in the Bible it talks how Jesus went up to the mountain and was silent and he just was there with God alone. And my husband's like, well, Lex, like, your mountaintop is going to look different than, your friend's mountaintop. And maybe your mountaintop is when your daughter is sitting on the floor playing and you're just watching her and you're just like in awe of God and you're just with him. You're just thanking him. God, thank you for this. Thank you for this child. And so I think that we need to remember that prayer doesn't always have to look like sitting down, completely silent with a cup of coffee and your Bible. Like it does not have to look like that. Like it can look like maybe one of those holy moments for you is cooking. Like for me, cooking and gardening used to be just my holy time with him. I loved it. So just keep that in mind. All right. So the next thing you can do is also use phone notes. I've heard of somebody, who was it? Somebody was just telling me, a friend of mine, doesn't matter, was telling me that she uses phone notes and she just kind of just writes down things. And I'm like, this is genius. Like sometimes we need to get those things out, but we're out and about and we don't have a journal with us. Like this is the perfect way to do that. So make those phones useful and put it in your phone notes. All right. The last thing with prayer that I love to do is have Bible verses ready for when I do worry so I can meditate on them. And sometimes I'll just read them 4, 5, 6 times over until I really get it through my head. And so if you need a resource on Bible verses for worry, I do have a blog post below that I've linked. So, yeah, that is pretty much how I have learned to quiet worry in motherhood. So, let me go over the 4 areas again, just so you don't forget. And like I said, this will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can come back anytime and take a look at it. All right. So, one, we need to shift that mindset from realizing that, I am not going to change the outcome by worrying. So, by giving it to God, trusting Him with it, letting go of that control, which is number 2, is really going to help me to stop worrying. All right, number 3 is what we should and shouldn't do in motherhood when we're worried, right? And number 4 is just prayer, and just that it changes everything. All right, so I will do a Q&A here in a few minutes if anybody has questions. But I want to share with you that I have the Blessed Mamas membership, which is open today. It's only open for 3 days this month. I have a few mamas who have joined me in the early bird, and we have just been having like the sweetest time. Like they are just the most amazing, loving women. I was struggling after getting back from vacation, and they just like gave me this encouragement that I so needed. So if you are looking for community, these women are awesome. I'm so excited to see what God is going to do here. If you want to join us with the Blessed Mamas membership, the link is below. I'm going to share right now everything that you're going to get. This first month is completely free. So the month of October is free. We are going to dig deeper into these 4 topics. If you want to see a real change, like you want to see change in who you are as a mother, you absolutely need to sign up. I have already found myself, we did a little mini study. If you saw that, I had emailed you it on last Friday. And we went through it as a group, and just hearing like one of the moms was like, I never realized that God was showing up in motherhood until I went through this um study with you. And I'm like, man, like how good is God that he's like showing up and changing moms' lives like literally every single day. And so I am so excited to grow with you guys and to just become the moms that we were made to be. So in this membership, you are going to get, like I said, your first month free. So October will be completely free, and then it's $10 a month. You will get a weekly study with my notes. You're going to get journal prompts, like I just said. The moms are loving them. They're feeling like it's really helping them to think through these topics so that way they can be a better mom, but really so they can make changes. And I feel like that's the part for me, the sticking point. Like I know all the right things to do, but actually thinking through how I can achieve them changes it for me. You're also going to get access to the private Facebook group. That's how we're all chatting right now. But I'm also going to be breaking this up in either small groups or partners, just depending on how many ladies we have. And this small group and partner is really a time where you're going to get to make friends. I know with, the way the world has been, it's been so hard to make friends. And that is why I created the Blessed Moms membership, because I really, really wanted to encourage moms to make friends, because it's hard to when you didn't get to have a birthing class, when you can't go to the library, when just all these things you cannot do. So anyway, that is why I made this. The other thing that you're going to get is the virtual monthly coffee date. I'm calling it. It's going to be a Zoom call. So we're going to be live. Like I'm going to actually get to sit and chat with you, which I'm super, super, super excited about, because I feel like I not only are you going to learn, but I am learning from you guys too. And that's the coolest part about it. And I want you to know, like, I'm not an expert. Obviously, I'm not an expert on worry. I don't know everything, but I'm just sharing what I've learned thus far and what I know. And so I think that that is a really important thing to keep in mind. But I do want you to know one thing before I open for Q&A, that these studies are created from the Bible. So I want you to go back and read every ounce of scripture. And if you think for some reason it doesn't align with what I'm teaching, I want you to tell me. I am a person that takes the Bible very literally. What it says is what it means to me. So know that I try my absolute best to not take anything out of context. My hope is that these workshops would be from him, that it wouldn't be my words, that it would be his. And so if you have that in mind, I feel like we can just grow and just become the moms that God has called us to be. And not only that, but we can be better for our children. And so, anyway, I'm so excited. If you want to join, like I said, the link is below. The first month is completely free, and then it's $10 a month. So I am going to open this up for Q&A. I don't think I have any questions. Not any questions yet, but while I'm waiting to see if there is any, I do want you to know that I will be doing these free monthly workshops every single month, regardless of how well this membership does. I really, really, really hope that God has a plan for this membership. Just that I could find women who want to grow, who want to be better moms, and really who are kingdom minded, because that's really what I've struggled with most through this whole time of being a mom during a pandemic. Not being able to go to church, not being able to just do all the things. So, anyway, I don't have any questions, but if you do have questions in the replay, make sure that you comment them below and I would love to answer them. So, anyway, this is going to wrap up the How to Quiet Worry in Motherhood. I'm so excited to meet you in the membership. If you have any questions about that, make sure that you either comment below or email me. I'm always available for that. And yeah, so anyway, I love you guys. I'm praying for you, and I will see you next month. All right.